Hi everyone, welcome to a new Talos video. In this video I will show you how easy it is to move an application between environments and also introduce that application into microservices in container world using Talos. Specifically, in this demo, I will migrate an application that is running on a WebSphere Application Server legacy middleware environment to a microservices approach using WebSphere Liberty and then move it to a Docker container on Kubernetes. So I have already my WebSphere environment defined on Talos. This is the representation of that WebSphere cell. And the first thing we'll do is read the configuration from this environment. So what we will do here is connect to the WebSphere application server cell and read all the configuration and applications configured on that cell. This environment is basically a very simple WebSphere application server cell that has an application installed, which is called dictionary application. And this application has some associated configurations, as for instance, a database connection to a MySQL database. We can see this application running here on this environment. Okay, so it's very basic application. We enter a word and it brings the definition of that word. Okay, so let's wait a little bit until the import of those configurations finish, and um, and uh, and then we will create a template with all the associated with the application and all the associated configurations for that application in order to be able to move the application between environments. Okay, we are back. The reading of the configuration already finished. It took a little bit longer due to my environment being really slow. But this is will allow me to create a template to move the application between environments. So let's do new was template. And I can see here on this tree all the configurations that are done on my dev was environment. Let's call the template dictionary app template version 1. I can include the description as well. In this case, I will go directly to select the application and all the associated configurations. So I have the application here. There are some deployment configurations for the application. And since I will be moving this application between environments, and there is some uniqueness between environments. So for instance, my dev environment will not have the same database connection than my QA or my prod environment. There are changes that I need to do when deploying this application, and we do that using tokens or variables on templates. So one of them, for instance, that we really need to do is on the map to modules map module to servers configuration, which specifies where the application will be running. In this case, you can see that is on the dictionary cluster. Um, this is a string that identifies the cluster, and it uses the cell name and the cluster name. And for I will be moving this application to other environments, and the cell name changes between environments. So what I will do is link topology attribute here. On the cell level, I will choose the cell name, and then I just need to say, okay, where the cell name will go on the string. It will be here, and the cluster will be called dictionary cluster in all my environments, so I don't need to care about it. So I can save. This will allow this setting to change between environments, changing the cell name being used on that configuration. So I have the application and the deployment options, and I will also need the database connection. So that's on the GDBC section. I have, as I said, the connection is on a MySQL database, so I have this GDBC provider that has my data source for my dictionary application. So I also need to, so as I said, I will be moving this application between environments and to Liberty and to containers, so I will need to do some changes on the configuration because some of them will not be the same on all my environments. So let's create some variables. I will create a variable here for the driver path, and the value of this variable in this case will be this path here. Okay, this is what we call a partial variable, which is a variable that does not take all the configuration value. It just takes a part of it. Okay, because in this case, the jar file I will be using will be the same on all the environments, just the path that changes. So I just need to create a variable for that path. Okay. We also need to go into the properties and create some other variables on the password. So if I will be connecting to different MySQL databases, more likely I need different passwords. Okay. The port number may change as well. So let's create another variable. Call it MySQL port. And the server name may change as well. So let's create my MySQL server variable, and the user for connecting to the database may change as well. So let's create another variable. All right. So there is another property here that is URL, and the URL obviously picks up the SQL server and MySQL server hostname and MySQL server port. I already, as you remember, we just created those variables. We have here the SQL server hostname and the port here. So I don't need, so I need also to tokenize and to create a variable on this configuration, but I don't need to create a new variable. What I can do is to link existing variables to this value. So I can go here and select the MySQL server and MySQL port, and this will automatically see where those values are being used and create a partial variable using those two variables that I created before. So I will be reusing my variables on other configurations. Okay, I'm happy with my template, so I can save and close this template. And the first thing I will do is to move this application into a WAS9 cell that I have here. So this is pretty much an empty WAS9. So if I go into the WAS console and bear with me that because my environment is really slow, I can see that this WAS9 application WebSphere cell is empty, does not have any application installed or any configurations. So what we will do is to apply this template to this environment and install the application on this new environment. So I don't think I mentioned before. So this is a WAS9 cell WebSphere cell, and the other one that I showed before is a WAS85. So on this example, I will show you. I will show not only how to move an application between environments, but also how to use Talos to migrate environments and to upgrade WebSphere Application Server environments. So I will add my dictionary app template, and I need to provide some variable values. Obviously, for the cell name, I don't need to provide a value because it's using the topology cell name. Talos already knows what is the cell name, so it doesn't need you to provide that. And let's just provide the values for the other variables. In this case, I will use the same. This cell is basically installed on the same server. This WAS9 cell is basically installed on the same server than the WAS8, so I can just use the same connection details. Okay, I save the variables. And something I would like to show you is if I click, I don't need it, but if I click create payload, what this will do is to merge the template with the specifics of my environment. So, and if I see that, it will show me what will be created on my environment. So it will show me, for instance, on the properties, like the URL path property, the mapping between the variables values I provided with the actual template. Okay, to apply this to the environment, we will use Jenkins. Talos can use some. We can use some orchestration engines to provide orchestration to Talos actions, and Talos is connected directly with Jenkins. So while I was playing around with Talos interface, some artifacts were being created on Jenkins. In this case, to allow me to run run the template through the environment. So the only thing I need to do to apply this template to the environment is to click here on Jenkins and click Build Now. This will run a set of activities which are basically actions or steps from WAS to apply the template into the WebSphere Application Server cell. I can go here into see the output of the Jenkins job. That will show me the activity being run. My environment is slightly slow, but yeah, we can see here the Talos activity is being run to apply the template. Bear with me a little bit. I will come back once this is finished to continue with the demo. Okay, I'm back. My Jenkins job already finished successfully. So the dictionary app template I created was successfully applied to the WebSphere 9 cell. So we can see here the details of the configurations, the JDBC configurations being created and the application being deployed. So if I go into my WebSphere 9 cell, I can now see the application here, and we can also see the JDBC provider for MySQL created as well. So this was the application for my old WAS 8.5 cell. Let's see if we can see the application on my WAS 9. Yeah, it's here, it's running. Let's see if the database connection is working, is running perfectly. So we already have the application being moved from a WAS cell, WAS 8.5 cell to a WAS 9 cell. But we can do more, and as I said before, we will show you now how to move this application from WebSphere Application Server into a microservices world on WebSphere Liberty. So let's close here the WAS windows and let's go back to Talos. So what we will do is going into the templates environment, select my dictionary app template, and I have a button here that says transform to Liberty. So this basically will pick up my WebSphere Application Server template, and it goes through a dictionary of configurations and moves those configurations from WebSphere Application Server specific to Liberty. So it goes through what I created as a JDBC, all my deployment options, and transform that. So Talos has a dictionary on and knows how to transform that into and mapping that into WebSphere Liberty configurations. So what we will do is basically transform to Liberty. It will be I will be asked for a new dictionary name, new template name. We'll leave it as the default dictionary app Liberty. And there will be a process to very quickly transform my environment, my template into a Liberty. So if I go back into the template, I can see it here, and I see this is my Liberty template, and I can see the configurations. I can see the same configurations, so my JDBC driver, my data source, but from move it from WebSphere Application Server into Liberty. I can see also that my variables were migrated and are ready to be used. Obviously, except the WebSphere cell value because it's not necessary on Liberty. So let's do now, what we will do now is to apply this template into a Liberty instance. So I can go do it from here. I can click Add and select Dev Liberty environment. This Dev Liberty environment is running on in this environment I have here, and I will show you, is basically a pretty new environment of Liberty with a single server that is pretty much empty. So if I show you the server.xml, it is very empty WebSphere Liberty default server. So what we will do is to apply this template now to this environment and basically install and deploy the application into my Liberty environment. So the first thing we need to do before applying this template to the environment is specify the variable values. Okay, so let's do that. The variable values will be pretty much the same because I'm using the Liberty on the same server, so the database connection is pretty much the same, but it could be different. I could have like this Liberty as a dev environment and have a dev MySQL server to connect to. Okay, I specify the values, I save the variables, and now I will do the same to apply the same I did to apply the template into WebSphere Application Server. I will do it to apply it to Liberty. I will go back to Jenkins. I will have now dev Liberty configure job, and I can run that. And I will go through the console and see this template being applied to my Liberty environment and the configurations be created and the application deployed. Okay, it was pretty fast, so the template was already applied to my Liberty environment. So for one thing we can do is go into the server.xml that I showed you before and see the differences. So you can see now it's pretty different from what I show you before. So we have now an application deployed, we have the JDBC driver created and the data source as well. So let's just see if the application is running. If I open a new tab and I click here on this link I already have, which is the dictionary, should have the dictionary application running on Liberty. Yeah, it's here. So if I try to pick up something from the database, here we are. So we have a value from the database. So the application was perfectly installed on my Liberty environment and is connected to the database. So what we will do now, and since we are already on the microservices world or on a very lightweight application server, is to running this on the container. And Talos allows me to do that with the Docker integration. So if I go into my container section, I already have this Talos environment connected to Docker and to a Kubernetes. And the first thing I will do is to create a container image. I will call it dictionary app, and I will provide the version number 1. And I will select that this will be a container image using a Liberty. Okay, the base image will be CentOS, and I have some options on the number of servers I can create on my Liberty and some options on paths and things like that. I will pretty much leave it on the default and create a single server 1 Liberty server. On the next screen, I have the ability to add templates to my image. Okay, and I will select my dictionary app Liberty template, which I created by migrating it from WAS. Okay, and I can also manage variable sets. So when I create my dictionary, my container image will be associated to a set of variables. And then when I instantiate this container image into containers, I can select which set of variables I will use. So this allows me for the same image to create containers for dev, for prod, for QA using different variable values. In this case, let's create 2 variable sets. One is dev, another prod. And for each template, I need to provide the values of each variable set. Okay, for the dev environment, let's provide a DB driver path, which will be slightly different than what we have been using for the other environments, because it will need to be a path inside the container. The MySQL password, whoops, wrong copy paste. Okay, the port, the MySQL server, and in this case I will use the IP because the container will not know how to reach the devops.demo.com host name, so I will need to use the IP and the SQL server root. Okay, so these are the values that will be used when I run my container as a dev using the dev variable set. I can provide some different values for the prod, like I don't know, opt.ibm only, and then the password could be the same, and the port. But I could provide, for instance, a different IP address to connect to a different SQL server. Okay, so now we have here 2 sets of activities. One of them is what we call build activities, and those are activities that will be run when I'm building my container image. And basically, it pick up the base image that I selected before, in this case the CentOS, and will run those activities on top of it. In this case, I will create, I will just run the install Liberty activity and the create server activity. This is configurable, so the defaults are configurable. If my company has different activities that I need to run, and I can also configure it for each container image I'm creating, and I will do that now. I will need to add a new build activity, which is called get MySQL driver. This is a custom activity we developed that will connect to get the MySQL JDBC drivers and put it on the container. The instantiation activities are basically activities that are run every time I instantiate my image into a container, and in this case are the defaults are the apply the templates and then start the servers. Okay, so let's I'm happy with my settings here, and let's save and build the image. Okay, my dictionary app Docker image was already built successfully, so I can click now done, and I will see my image created on the Docker. And one thing I can do is to create a container for this image. So let's do that through Talos, which provides some basic interactions with Docker, like creating a container. So let's provide a container name. Dictionary container is okay, and the variable set. So this will tell me, okay, for this container, which variable sets I will use. Basically, if it's a dev, it's a prod, I will use a dev. And the ports mapping for the container to allow me to reach the container. So let's put like 9080, which is the server one port, and the host port can be 9090. Okay, so we'll take a while to create a container. Okay, it's being created. And soon I will get the application running on my Docker environment. So if I go here on port 9090, soon I will get the application here. Let's wait a little bit. Obviously the container takes some time to start properly. There you go. We have the application running on the Docker container, and let's see if the database connection will work. Yeah, everything working on my application running on a Docker container. So as the last step of this demo, what we will do is to push this to a Kubernetes environment. So I can select I have my Kubernetes environment here, by the way. It doesn't have any deployments, so what we'll do is create a deployment with that image. And to be able to do that, we will first initially need to push the image to a Kubernetes Docker registry. So let's do that. This Docker registry is already configured on my Talos environment, and we'll push the dictionary app Docker image as it created into my registry, which actually is running on is a Google Container Registry. So this will take a little bit, bear with me, and I will come back once this is finished. Hi again. So as you can see, my dictionary app container image was already pushed to my Docker registry. I'm using Google Container Registry, as I mentioned before. So if I go into here on my Google console, I should be able to see, yeah, the dictionary app image on my container registry. Here we go. It was uploaded just now. So I can now click done here and go back into. I have an indicator that this was pushed to the Kubernetes Docker registry configured, and I can go into Kubernetes and create a deployment for this. So I just click create deployment. I give it a name. It can be dictionary dev deployment. And I select the image, in this case the dictionary app that is on Google Container Registry, the tag of it, and the variable set, and I will select dev once again. I will create a route which is basically a service to allow me to reach the container created by Kubernetes, the pod created by the Kubernetes. So I will call it dictionary service. If is that okay? So right. So if I click OK, the deployment config will be created on Kubernetes. Here you go. So if I go into my dashboard on Kubernetes, I can see the deployment. Let me refresh this. I can see the deployment, and if I go into it, I can see the pod being created successfully. Okay. On Talos, if I can see some details on the deployment as well, the status of it, and how and the configurations that were used to create the deployment, some basic configurations. Now let's see, since we already confirmed that the pod is running, let's see if we can reach it using the service we created, the dictionary services, using the 3000 port. So if I click here and I have a link already, yeah, the dictionary web application on Kubernetes pod, you can see is running. I don't have the database connection configured because properly, because obviously the I don't have the network configured to my pod being able to reach my MySQL server, but I can see the application is running. So it was just a matter of having the right details and network settings to have this working on a real environment. That's pretty much everything I wanted to show you today. So I showed you how to create a template for an application to allow moving it from between environments, and also to a different technology, in this case to WebSphere Liberty, and then use that to go into the containers world by creating a container image, running that image on Docker, and also also on Kubernetes. So I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to reach us if you want to know more about this. Thank you.